Welcome to our lesson on the history of the Middle Ages in 10 minutes, which will be a brief overview of the period. We're going to identify some key events from this topic and just define key terms that are going to come up throughout our discussions. So, what was the Middle Ages the middle of? Well, it was a period of European history between 500 and 1500. Other names include the Dark Ages and the Age of Religion, but the most popular name is the medieval period. So if you look at these names given to this period by historians, what assumptions would you make about life in this period? Was it good? Was it bad? Were there lots of changes? Lots of things to think about that we'll discuss in class. So the early Middle Ages was the end of the Roman Empire, the rise of the religion of Islam, the rule of barbarians, kingdoms were created, Europe was invaded, knights and feudalism emerged, universities and guilds were created, and the Black Death. So, the beginning of the Middle Ages. Rome couldn't hold together anymore. All the challenges from people attacking and other tribes, it kind of fell apart and broke into pieces. And barbarians took over. People like the Visigoths, Goths, Vandals, Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, and many other groups became leaders in these areas as the Roman Empire fell apart. And Christianity became a big legacy. Because the Emperor Constantine joined the religion in 312, it became the one thing that carried on from Rome that was really positive and held things together. While a new religion 24 years after Rome fell found a leader from Saudi Arabia named Muhammad, he would challenge the Christian view with a new religion that became a big deal and would define the Middle Ages. And of course, he would go on to create a large empire, conquering the southern part of what was the Roman Empire. So shout out, what were some key events covered so far from the Middle Ages? Pause and think for a moment, or rewind the video. If you said barbarians take over Rome, Christianity, or Islam, you'd be correct. Now the new medieval world, how things changed. The end of the Roman Empire meant that Europe was no longer one kingdom. It was a lot of little kingdoms. German tribes formed their own kingdoms. And the kings started to rely on the loyalty of owners, so the people around them, they called them lords. So a new system of government began to emerge. The medieval church became a huge part of medieval life. The church held the world together. The Catholic Church helped make peace with the barbarian tribes who conquered Rome. They sent out missionaries to conquer or to connect with other German tribal areas. And the Pope became a symbol of unity when everything else was falling apart. Religion held these people together. And so then feudalism was created. Feudalism was a system of government where kings, peasants, and lords all relied on each other. We're going to learn more about this in class. But basically everyone had to help the people above them and support the king and make the kingdom work. And as a result of its payment, the king would build great castles where people could hide when there were invasions. So shout out, what did the church in the Middle Ages do? Pause, think for a moment, or rewind your video. Hold the world together. Help make peace with invaders. Missionaries contacted new people. Now we move on to the Crusades, another big event in the later Middle Ages. Although Jerusalem had been controlled by the Arabs in the 600s, they gave the Christians the right to still worship and visit the area, which is the Holy Land. And the Byzantine Emperor, because eventually the empire breaks in half, there's two emperors, calls the Pope and says, hey, we need to take the Holy Land back just for Christians. So as a result, the Crusades began. A long period of attacks against people who are of the Islam or Muslim faith. Of course, urban life grew. During the Middle Ages, towns grew drastically. There were fewer invasions because more people found stability. The Crusades brought many European kingdoms together. And new inventions improved harvests. And so the population grew a lot. And so this is a period where things got really bad, but then they started to get better. But then climate change and famine came. Things got warmer, or colder, so crops kind of dropped. And so then we get a period of bad years from 1315 to 1317. Most towns and regions, 10 to 50% of their population starved. And then famine led to violent crime and all kinds of other stuff that was really nasty. And the church the church couldn't help it, and kings had to deal with this, and so it sort of led to a big change in medieval life. And then, of course, the Black Death. It was a illness that they couldn't find a cure for it and didn't know the actual cause. But Italian merchants would come in from China and other places and come to ports, and suddenly these boo-boos or blisters and fevers would start popping up in people, and they didn't know what was causing it. In reality, there were fleas that were being carried on the rats in the ships, and it led to all kinds of illness. And people tried all kinds of crazy different cures to solve this, but it ended up killing a large chunk of the European population. So homework. I want you guys to think back. What did the church do after the fall of Rome? And what challenges did the Crusade and Black Death cause in Europe? That concludes our video.